Imagine beating the world record for a single solve 3 times in one average. This past weekend, we didn't only see that, but we also saw the first 4x4 world record single in over 2 years with Max Park's 1583. And he's still the only person to ever get a sub 17 officially, by the way, which is just crazy. And if we're looking at the 3 biggest things that happened this weekend, the third one was also around 2 years in the making, and ladies and gentlemen, it has given me hope. If you didn't know, Yihang now has 25 official sub-5 averages. At this point, I think it's fair to say that we have kind of a Thanos situation going on in the 3x3 world, but what we've seen now has proven that Yihang is most definitely defeatable. Does it sound weird to be saying that about a 10-year-old? Yes. But that's okay, because I have to give it to Tymon here. This is maybe the most beautiful 3x3 average I've ever seen, with a counting 4.18. And that's just to add to this absolute masterclass of a European record average. You see, Tymon's 484 isn't special just because it's yet another continental record, but it really just shows us how close this is, and it's a lot closer than you might think. I mean, this past weekend, over 3 rounds of 3x3, Tymon had a mean of 5.02 if you average all of his averages together. That's almost sub 5. Not only that, but he's also now somehow doing 13 TPS solves with these absolutely insane solutions. Back in January, we saw Tymon get an average with a 4.49 BPA, and you can argue all you want, but let's be honest here, nobody really thought he was actually going to get that average because he would have needed to count a 3.92. But this time, it was different. All he needed in this average was another low 4, which it's easier said than done, of course, to get a low 4. But he actually did almost end up improving on this average on the very last solve where he got a 527. This average is yet another step to a second person hitting that mid-4 average, and he does it like nothing else you'll ever see in Cube. So we're going to go ahead and look at his counting 4.17 for what I think are the 3 most interesting solves out of this entire average. And let me tell you, I had to look at these solutions for quite a long time to even figure out what's going on here, and I'm not even sure you'll be able to, even if I try to explain them the best that I can, but I'd be doing you a great disservice to not go ahead and break these down. Alright, so this is Tymon's first solve of the average, which ended up being a 4.13, which was actually his best solve of the entire average. Alright, so he ends up doing the solve on white cross, and it's actually fairly simple for his standards, but you'll see why this is such a fast solve. So what he does is he chooses a very simple cross solution, so no crazy X cross or anything, but he ends up setting up into this 3-move insert into the back right with the green-orange right here. So what he does is he basically just starts off by inserting this cross piece pretty standardly here in the front, and now we have this blue-orange adjacent to each other, and you'll see how this pair is going to be set up into the back. So what he does is just, instead of just doing a D prime, he inserts a U move in there, just so he can set these 2 up. And then he's also tracking this red-blue, which I do think that he saw in inspection, because as you'll see, we finish off the cross here, and then he inserts these into the back, and then he ends up canceling into this one, so very fluid here to start off the F2L. And then, I'm not sure if he saw this pair or not, I don't think he did, but he has a pretty insane look ahead anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then we have these 2 into the back, so the diagonal slots didn't really end up mattering that much because he could just insert that one. And then we have a free pair here to the front, and then it's just a Fatsoon into RB perm, which I don't use this out. I'm very sorry. I should know this one. Whatever. Yeah, that's not the alg used, but whatever. I used the RUD one, but he ended up doing this solve at 13.8 TPS, which is by far a PR for him, I think, in competition. So yeah, that's basically what happens when he does very simple F2L. There's just a standard cross solution, no crazy X crosses or anything, and just spams TPS. And then we get to his counting 4.17, which is quite the opposite here, as opposed to the simplicity in the first solve. This solve it's honestly just pretty mind-blowing. We have this kind of odd setup here with the cross pieces down here, which you would think it's a good scramble, right? But, you know, we have the whole cross is kind of messed up here. But what he's going to do is he's actually going to insert this cross piece. Now, you might be asking why, but we'll get to that here in a minute. And what he's going to do, of course, you insert this cross piece, and then he's going to flip both of these. So he's going to flip both of these edges, and then the cross will just be solvable with a D2. But of course he's Tymon, so we're not just going to do that. What he's going to do instead is insert this cross piece, which kind of is a B prime like that. So it's kind of like, you know, a D prime on the bottom with your ring finger. And then he's going to put this edge and connect it to its center so that whenever we flip these 2 cross edges, this one's just going to do an R move and it's going to be solved right here. And now you might be thinking, okay, now we have to find the corresponding corner to solve it into here. But he's also, you know, he's Tymon, so we're going to find a pseudo pair instead. So we're going to solve this as a pseudo pair later on in the solve. And then also we're going to solve this corner into here. So now we have a double X cross, and that's basically what goes on in his mind during this solution. So yeah, I hope that I explained that pretty well, because we're going to go into this right now. So what he does is he flips these two with this kind of algorithm you do right here. Ignore this corner, it doesn't really matter. And then we're gonna, you know, we have this edge solved, like I said, and then we're gonna go into the pseudo pair right here. So he inserts it, he has to do a D move, you know, to line it up, and then he inserts it, and then you just have this corner to solve the double X cross. So he inserts that corner, and then, yeah, that's how you make a double X cross on the scramble with absolutely no blocks. You know, this is just normal stuff, I guess, for Tymon at this point. And then you have this pair in the back like this, and then you get EO by just doing the regular alg for this. And then here, he actually doesn't end up doing Soon ZPLL, which I don't blame him, because, you know, probably would have solved the solve at this point. You can just do lefty Soon into J perm here. And he does it with basically no pauses, so it doesn't really matter either way. And this is another 13 TPS solve, which is pretty insane, because you would think that you would need a very simple solution to end up pulling off 13 TPS in a solve. But it turns out you can still do a pretty insane solution, and he didn't really slow down at all while doing the X cross. And finally, this is the solve that ended up securing him the European record average of 4.84, tying him with Roy Hung. And he ends up doing this one on green cross, so we can scramble with green top and white front. And we can notice that the scramble is marginally better than the last one, as we can see that we have this block right here, and then we also have this edge already connected to its corresponding centers here. So what he does is he ends up just making this little square in the back here, and then you can basically notice that all we have to do now is solve this edge. So what he's going to do is he solves this edge right here, so it's adjacent to this one. Now we have 3 of them in, and now all he needs to do is a D prime and a U prime at the same time, so that we can kind of, while inserting this one, we can cancel into inserting this edge right here. And that solves the X cross. And then I'm pretty sure that he also planned this green-red right here, which is just 2-gen into the front, and then he rotates, and now we have this blue-orange into the back, which is, you know, it's just pretty simple stuff from here. And then you might think to rotate and then solve this one in the back with arm moves, but what he actually does is an alg that you can basically solve this pair rotation with, which is just doing a sledgehammer and then inserting it like this. So he does that, no crazy, you know, ZBLS stuff or anything like that right here. But he does end up doing EO to ZB with this alg, so no like FRU, F prime stuff, just that alg to orient the edges. And then he goes into this ZB, which he does end up locking up on quite a bit, but you know, he didn't want to beat Roy Hong that quickly. He wanted to give Max Park a chance to get a 4.83 average, as I'm sure that he will do. But yeah, that's how you secure the European record average. His next solve ended up being a 527, so he was pretty close to actually improving upon this even more. But yeah, you can't be mad any day to see a Tymon European record. So absolutely absurd. I mean, you had your double X crosses, crazy pseudo stuff like that, right? But you also had some simple solutions like something you would see Yi Hang do, right? And another really surprising thing I want to add on to that is he actually did 3 out of these 5 solves on white cross. And that's something else that I've been noticing about Tymon lately, is that he's kind of leaning even more into white and yellow as opposed to being fully color neutral, right? You can of course take advantage of the color neutral situations if they present themselves, but he's been doing white cross a lot more than I've seen him ever do in the past. Yeah, it's definitely great to still see Tymon improving somehow. It's coming down to the point where I honestly have no idea how set improvements are even being made in the first place. And then from there, it's like, what even is the human limit of this solving style? And, you know, I think we're getting close, but I always say that, and then he keeps, you know, improving upon it even more. And then we always go back to the same old question of how far is too far to plan into inspection, right? I bet Tymon can plan 4 pairs on a lot of these scrambles, but it really just comes down to whether or not that's worth it, and, you know, the look ahead on the last 2 pairs or just the last pair is going to make up for that at all. So yeah, definitely peak efficiency right there. And then on another note, Max actually got the first ever sub 140 7x7 meet, and we are not surprised at all. I mean, who would be surprised at this? This is just information at this point. And oh yeah, shout out to bro in the Discord for randomly getting a 4.08, which is actually the 15th fastest solve ever. So yeah, Sebastian Stone, good job, my man. That's what a PLL skip no AUF will do for you. So yeah. And the funniest thing is that he said he averages like 7 or 8. So yeah, that's just a skill issue, honestly. Like, everybody should just get better. I mean, 408, you know, it's light work. Speaking of soon PLL skips with no AUF, do you know that 6-year-olds actually do end up getting soon PLL skips on every single solve? Because they do soon ZB on every single solve, which means that you will never be faster than them. You just won't. Like, there are only a couple people watching this video, probably 0, honestly, that can say that they're faster than them. So yeah, maybe you should have been learning ALGs instead of eating Cocoa Krispies at the age of 3. A skill issue. So besides that, yeah, stuff up here or whatever. I'll be streaming at some point this weekend maybe, and yeah, that's about it. See ya.